She didn't even mind the jerks that cut her off without so much as a nod or a wave, so intent on saving those 2 seconds or 3 yards that apparently were worth the risk of collision. Already she's seen 2 cars pulled over to the side, their red-faced drivers exchanging insurance details over crumpled fenders. Traffic seemed even heavier this afternoon, thanks to a work crew on Elgin Avenue that had diverted drivers to an alternate route on Bentley. Vehicles slowed to a crawl, and without meaning to, Lisa found herself playing the driver game Ellen had invented years ago when they were bored on long drives. She looked at the driver in the Camry on her right, a man in his mid-30s whose face was set in determined lines. He glanced at his watch, grimaced, drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, glanced at his watch again. Robert, murmured Lisa. Divorced. Promised he'd take his kids to their soccer game. In her rearview mirror, she saw a woman with blonde hair piled high on her head driving a battered Buick Century. Raylene, Mary Kay representative, still hoping for the pink Cadillac. A horn blew somewhere up ahead, followed by a squeal of tires as a blue Durango beat a yellow light. The Camry turned right and a minivan took its place, the air around it throbbing with bass. A boy about her age played air drums and bobbed his head to the beat of an urban rap. Too easy, she could hear Ellen say. Lisa shook her head, rose to the challenge. Kyle, just got his license. First time out alone without his mom. She grinned. Tough to be cool in a minivan, Kyle. She imagined Ellen laughing, her teeth perfectly white. Before the medications darkened them, turned them the sallow color of legal notepads. Lisa gripped the steering wheel, tried to swallow around a sudden fist in her throat. She stared straight ahead, refusing to look at the other drivers jockeying for space around her. Reef took another look over his shoulder. Nothing. He hadn't seen the guy with the cell phone since he'd cut through the vacant lot behind Fishman's. About time. The man had stuck with him long after Reef had figured he'd give up and go home. Pain in the ass. Reef hated it when things interfered with his plans. He waited another moment just to be sure, then turned left on Belcher. Lisa listened to the steady tink, tink, tink of the turn signal as she waited for the light to change, grateful to see traffic flowing steadily on Carver. She decided to shortcut her way home, no longer interested in the extended play version of the drive. Without realizing it, she glanced at her watch again, grimaced, leaned back against the headrest. The traffic light glowed, immutably red. She fought to keep from drumming her fingers on the steering wheel. Reef stood on the overpass above Birmingham, his hand in his jacket pocket, squeezing and releasing the rock. The thing he liked about Park Street was its lack of traffic, especially during rush hour. Most of the traffic was on the multi-lane outbound highway that ran perpendicular to it. The people who used Park Street and this overpass were mainly those who lived in the few houses scattered along its length and people heading toward the Greenbelt at its south end. And rush hour wasn't a time many people headed toward the park, which suited Reef just fine. He didn't need an audience for what he was about to do. The stone fit in the hollow of Reef's palm like a piece of a puzzle, an extension of his own hand. Reef had loved rocks for as long as he could remember. Not that there were many around the places he'd lived. The tenements he'd called home over the years had been surrounded by concrete and asphalt, oceans of hardness. It was his grandmother who had somehow made the hardness bearable, and it was she who had placed the first stone in his hand. He'd been almost 5, and they'd been on the way to Truro in the old Dodge Dart his grandfather drove. Reef had grown car sick, and his grandfather had had to pull over on the 102 so he could puke. Car after car whizzed by as he retched on the side of the road, his grandfather cursing him, warning him he'd better not throw up in the car if he knew what was good for him. During the tirade, Nan slipped down into the ditch where she moved aimlessly about in the long grass like someone lost. When she returned, she had in her palm a small round stone as smooth as glass. It's a 6 stone, she explained when his grandfather had gone back in the car. She placed it in Reef's hand and closed his fingers over it. When you feel like you're gonna throw up, just squeeze it hard. It'll take the sick feeling away. It worked. Each time the waves of nausea rolled up over him, he gripped that stone like a lifeline, trying not to watch his grandfather's thick fist pound the horn at whoever was stupid enough to cut him off. And each time he squeezed that rock, he felt stronger, like he was somehow in charge.